Hello and welcome. Even as we face major conflicts in different parts of the world, we have with us a very special guest today on a two-day visit to India, Honorable Foreign Minister of Ukraine, Dmytro Kuleba. A very warm welcome to you, sir. He's going to be in conversation with us about how India and Ukraine can take the bilateral ties forward and how can these two countries strategically plan better global situation, better global peace. A very warm welcome to you. And my first question to you would be, how do you see the global situation and the bilateral ties amidst that between India and Ukraine going forward? And what are the biggest takeaways from your meeting with our Foreign Minister, Mr. S. Jaishankar, sir?
Thank you for having me. I think the world today is looking for leadership. Leadership that can take the world further over the problems we are facing. We have different powers in different parts of the globe. We have economic issues. We are still recovering from pandemic. So, and there are countries who have very good potential to lead by example and to lead others in addressing various issues. And for us, India, under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi, is definitely one of such global leaders. So I accepted the invitation of my colleague, Dr. Jaishankar, to visit India to basically discuss two things. First, how can we restore the excellent cooperation that Ukraine and India had before the large-scale invasion by Russia in Ukraine began? And second, how can we cooperate closely on the future of the world, on global issues? Because it will not be an exaggeration to say that the war that Ukraine is fighting will be one of the decisive moments for identifying the direction in which the global security situation will evolve. When Ukraine wins, there will be more peace all around the globe. If theoretically, this is not going to happen, but if theoretically Russia wins, then there will be more conflicts and violations of borders and invasions all across the globe. It's very simple. India is a global player, and we had a very meaningful conversation on both bilateral and global issues.
Any commitments to you that have been made by the Indian side? And I believe that now that the foreign ministers have met, a meeting between the prime ministers could be somewhere on the cards. Is it?
Well, hopefully, yes. We are working on organizing a meeting between President Zelensky and Prime Minister Modi. They had a number of phone conversations. They met in Hiroshima at the summit, at the G7 summit. But we are looking forward towards having a proper bilateral meeting between them. And today, myself and Dr. Jaishankar, we not only held our bilateral talks, but political talks, but we also held a session of the Intergovernmental Commission. This is the driving force to take our relationship forward. So we have to thoroughly prepare the meeting between our leaders, so that they have decisions prepared for them. We ministers have to do the work, and that's what we are doing. Today we agreed to restore cooperation that we had, despite the ongoing Russian invasion in Ukraine, and it's a sign of trust of India in Ukraine. We also agreed to identify new projects and programs that our countries can benefit from and that will take our relationship to the next level. And of course, we had a very detailed, in-depth conversation on the peace formula proposed by Ukraine to end the war in my country.
I'll ask you the next question very straightforwardly. And my question to you is, how challenging is this war with Russia as a country? And I ask this question in the background of the fact that do you feel, in a sense, that the amount of support in terms of weapons or aid that you were supposed to be getting from the West, as was promised by the West over a period of time, was not provided in a very timely manner? And that is why you feel a pressure because of the ongoing war that has been stretched over so long now?
Tonight, around 90 missiles, Russian missiles, hit targets in Ukraine. So I ask your viewers to imagine a situation where almost every night your country is being attacked with missiles, deadly missiles and drones, and 90 missiles target different pieces of infrastructure and civilian objects across the country. You go to bed, there is never a guarantee that you will wake up in the morning, that your house that you will not be covered die under the rubble of the house that you live in because a drone or a missile will hit it. And this has been happening for 2 years now. Yeah. Not to mention all the human losses that we went through. But people in India have to understand one thing. This is not the war just for the border or the piece of land or ideological differences. This is the war for the existence of Ukraine as a nation and a state, because Russia denies us the right to be Ukrainians and to have our own state. So if we give up, then there will be no Ukraine and no Ukrainians. Everything will be labeled as Russian, which will go against history and against future, which is simply not true. Therefore, we are enduring all these hardships because we know what is at stake. And as much as India would not sacrifice a square meter of your territory, we will not sacrifice ours, because it's ours. It belongs to us by law, by history, and by morals. When it comes to help, of course, I have to begin by thanking partners for everything they've done. It would have been much more difficult for Ukraine if this help did not arrive. But yes, you are right. When you are fighting a war, whatever you always need more and faster. Whatever you receive, you always need more and faster. And of course, I wish some of the assistance arrived in a more expedient way and in larger volumes. But we are working with partners on meeting all the demands of our army.
But coming back to that question again, is there a sense of being let down because of the delays?
How can you? This is not that kind of situation. Imagine this should never happen to you in person. But imagine a person, you are walking on the street, and a gangster attacks you on the street. You do not feel let down by the police, right? That allowed this to happen. You begin to fight for your life against this gangster. You are not telling yourself, okay, I'm exhausting myself, I will fight for 2 more minutes, but if I see that there is nothing I can do, I give up and let him do whatever he wants to me. No, you just keep fighting, you keep screaming, trying to attract attention, to attract more help, so that someone comes and helps you, but you never give up, because you understand what is at stake. It's your life that is at stake. Nation feels in exactly the same way to the way human being feels. And this is how we feel. We are just fighting because we know how high stakes are. And we do not feel abandoned because help is coming. Yes, given the scale of this war, we need more of military assistance. And as I told you, we are working with partners across the globe on receiving it.
I'll come back to the NATO membership later, but my next question to you is on Prime Minister Narendra Modi. How do you see his role in coming to a situation where a peace process can be evolved? Because Prime Minister Narendra Modi is one of those few leaders in the world who's been in touch with both countries and who has ensured humanitarian support to Ukraine and in the rebuilding process of Ukraine. But at the same time, we're also in touch with Russia. What role do you see specifically for Prime Minister Narendra Modi, also because he's evolved as a global leader in the peace process or coming to a solution situation or any talks?
Well, Prime Minister Modi took India to the next level, and he can take global security to the next level because of the role your country is playing in global security architecture. Leadership implies making first steps, being the first to make a step so that others can follow you. And we had a very detailed discussion today with Dr. Jaishankar on the step that India could make. Because we do believe that India is well positioned, not only in terms of bilateral relations between Ukraine and India, but also in terms of the high regard India enjoys in the global south. So if India makes a step, many countries will follow. This is how leadership is built. If you follow others, this is not leadership, this is following others. To establish the dynamics, the trajectory, you have to make the step. And as I told you, we believe India has the capacity to make that step, and India is engaging in a conversation with us on on what this step could be. I want to emphasize one particular element, that in these 2 years, since the moment when Prime Minister said to Vladimir Putin, this is not the era of war.
Yes, he did.
This was a very clear message. Since that moment until now, President Zelensky and Prime Minister Modi speak on a regular basis. I'm here. I will be looking forward to welcoming Dr. Jaishankar, like my colleague, in Kiev. We will be working on the meeting between our leaders. All of this means that there is positive dynamics that we have to reinforce.
And PM Modi has categorically said as war is never the solution in any such situation. There was much conversation. I will take you back to, I know those days were very, very horrendous for the people of Ukraine, and our heart goes out to them. But in the initial days of the war, there was conversation around this topic where a lot of Indian students were trapped in Kharkiv. And it was said that the war there was a momentary ceasefire that evening or that day, so that Indian students could be evacuated from there, removed, and a safe passage could be given to there. Can you lend us some clarity on what exactly happened? Because was it after Prime Minister Narendra Modi's intervention, there was momentary ceasefire for the Indian students to be evacuated, or was the war paused for some time?
Before the large-scale invasion by Russia, Kharkiv was the capital of Indian community.
Yes.
And every year, the Holy Festival was taking place in Kharkiv. And we were proud of it, and it became a part of the identity of the city. Today, Kharkiv is being systematically destroyed by Russia, by Russian missile and drone attacks. Every single day, there are drones and missiles being fired at Kharkiv. Recently, a member of the Russian parliament openly said that this city must be razed to the ground. And this is just another evidence of the ruthlessness of the Russian war. But we will be fighting for Kharkiv. We will prevail in this war, and I'm sure that the day will come when Indian students will return to Kharkiv and we will celebrate Holy Festival again in a peaceful city. When you take me back to the first days of the war, there was enormous amount of diplomacy being done at all levels to organize evacuation of foreign students from Ukraine. And of course, Indian students were the top among in the largest numbers. And this is a separate story. Because hundreds of thousands of people tried to flee Ukraine at the same time, Ukrainians themselves. But we managed to arrange special corridors and special kind of windows for foreign students to leave, and everyone was involved, from the top leaders, including Prime Minister of India and my president, to border guards who were actually letting people through. But today it was very nice of my colleague Dr. Jaishankar to mention this episode and to thank Ukraine for helping with the evacuation of Indian students, because it was a very difficult moment to explain why do you have to prioritize foreigners, over hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians who had to flee, who were trying to flee war-affected regions. But as foreign minister, of course, my primary responsibility is the security and well-being of my own compatriots, but my immediate second responsibility is towards other nations, other friendly nations, and their citizens who find themselves in the time of hardship. And we delivered, as diplomacy, as Ukrainian diplomacy, we delivered on both, helping our nations, our nation, but also other nations.
Russia has just faced a major ghastly terror attack where 140 of its citizens were killed in the Moscow concert hall. And I would like to quote from what they are saying, because Russia Foreign Ministry says, and I quote, "Hard to believe that Islamic State could launch the Moscow attack." And they go on to suggest that Ukraine, with the help of Western countries, including US and UK, played a role in this terror attack. How would you respond to that?
Well, it's a lie. Whatever happens in the world, Russia will try to use it to achieve two goals. First, to discredit Ukraine in the eyes of the world community, and second, to mobilize Russian people against Ukrainians, because they desperately always try to find an excuse to their unprovoked and illegal aggression against Ukraine. This is, the moment I heard the news about the events in Moscow, I said, make no mistake, in 24 hours they will find a Ukrainian footprint in it. Because this is what they are all focused on. Listen to Russian politicians, listen to Russian propaganda, they are obsessed with one thing: defeating Ukraine. And they involve everything that serves this purpose. If they have to lie to achieve this goal, they will lie, and that's what they're doing.
My next question to you is, how does the peace process go forward? The whole world, actually linked to this is another question. After the Israel-Palestine conflict, do you sense that the world is shifting its focus to this other war, and this is not being talked about much, the much needed peace process for a country like Ukraine, which is fighting for its, as you said, for its existence itself? You need a peace process. And if Ukraine needs peace, if you want truce, what are your conditions? Because I'm sure, if I can put it in the right words, the options and the situation is limiting in many ways, sir. You're facing Russia.
This is the art of diplomacy, to get the maximum out of any situation, the maximum for your country, for your nation. We do not feel the lack of political attention to the Russian invasion of Ukraine for a very simple reason, because what happens in Ukraine geographically happens in Europe, but has global implications. Imagine if Russia succeeds in Ukraine. Every country that wants to change borders by force, every country that doesn't like its neighbors, will learn a very simple lesson. Yes, it's difficult, but in the end it pays off to invade, to coerce, to grab the territory that belongs to others, to deny the identity and the rights of another nation to live independently. This will be the lesson that will be learned by various rulers across the world, and the world will drown in conflicts of this kind. So again, what is happening in Ukraine is important for everyone, for Asia, for Africa, for South America. But you are a far better professional than me in how media works, and you know that every new news overshadows the old news, and people love talking about new things. And any war is a tragedy. War in Ukraine is a tragedy. War in the Middle East is a tragedy. But if tomorrow there will be another war, I'm afraid the war in Middle East will be receiving less attention, because there is a new war taking place somewhere else. This is how it works. But media attention is one thing, political attention is another thing. I do not see any decline in the political attention towards the war in Ukraine, against Ukraine, and I'm here in the end of the day. You know, we are having a very serious conversation about peace process and how we can end the war. And when you ask me what do we want to get, we want nothing more than what belongs to us. It's very simple and very fair.
My next question to you comes back to your relationship with the West. What about the NATO membership? It's still hanging in balance, no commitment on that?
This is, you know, it's like a soap opera. It's moving from one season to another. Sometimes it seems that nothing happens for 100 episodes, but in the end there will be a development and a happy ending. So that's probably the best way to describe it. Now we are in a very active phase of aligning our army standards, military standards, with NATO military standards. For obvious reasons, Ukrainian army is the most capable army in Europe today. This is a statement of fact. So it would be absurd for a military alliance like NATO to ignore the contribution that Ukrainian army can make to securing whole Europe and Euro-Atlantic space as a whole. But last year at the summit in Vilnius, an important decision was made that made our path towards membership shorter, but we are still not there yet. But I have no doubts that it's going to happen because it just makes sense.
So you said it's a soap opera. Any idea of the final episode? When is the final episode going to be aired?
I have no answer to
when can we accept the final stand-up act?
But no, I cannot say when, but I simply don't know. But I have no doubts that it will be a happy ending.
Okay. You've come on a special mission. You're trying to rebuild your economy also, and I got to know you meeting the business community as well. What is your government's plan to rebuild? Because not just the economy, people's faith, trust, a whole lot of things have to be rebuilt there. How are you taking that forward?
You are absolutely correct. Ukraine will become probably the largest construction site in the world after war ends. Ukraine will be allocating significant resources to reconstruction. Our partners will be providing Ukraine with significant amount of assistance for the purpose of reconstruction. Ukraine will be a member of the European Union and will have access to respective European funds. And this is why we already see an incredibly high interest of construction and technological companies from all over the world in taking part in the reconstruction of Ukraine. And we will welcome the participation of Indian companies in the reconstruction of Ukraine. But to be ready for that moment, you have to start working now. And this was also one of the issues that I discussed with your businesses here and with your government, that Indian companies should begin looking at the projects they want to get involved in.
I think it's time to conclude the interview, but before that, on a lighter note, what do you think of India? Have you been able to visit some places? And what do you gather of India as a country today?
Every civilization and culture that exists in the world matters. But this world, our planet, it's impossible to imagine it without some founding civilizations. And for me, India is one of the founding civilizations of humanity. It's impossible to imagine world history without history of India, without the impact of your culture, influence of what was happening in India on other places. So for me, coming here, touching the stones, visiting your historical places, is like touching the source of the history of the entire humanity. It really makes a lot of sense, and it's very important to me. And of course, I have to confess, I love your food.
Oh, you do?
So for me, it's the first ever opportunity to try Indian food, where it was born and taken to the level of excellence.
Any dish you remember offhand?
No, I love this kachori bread.
Oh.
This is delicious, and all kinds of curries. I love cooking myself. I have to confess, and curry is something that I would not dare to pretend I'm good at,
Okay.
but I love cooking curries.
I love them.
So this is this. It's like, your cuisine is like your foreign policy. The most difficult part, the most sophisticated part of Indian cuisine is to find the exquisite balance of spices. And I think this is what diplomats are perfectly suited for, to find exquisite, sophisticated balances.
There you have it. You're saying it like a diplomat. Thank you so much, Honorable Foreign Minister of Ukraine, for joining us in this beautiful conversation, and looking forward to how things pan out between the two countries. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity.